depending on how much debt you have, so baby step number 2, paying off all your debt, it could take you years. I have been asked this question a lot. What is my opinion on Financial Peace University and everything that Dave Ramsey teaches and everything that comes out of Ramsey Solutions? What do I believe about it? And so finally, after probably a couple years of getting this question, I decided to sit down and create this video. And I took this task very seriously because I have a lot of opinions and a lot of beliefs about Financial Peace University, and I wanted to express them well. I wanted to give my thoughts some backing so that way you can understand where I'm coming from and why I am saying the things that I'm saying about Financial Peace University. Before I jump into any of my opinions, I first off want to say that Financial Peace University and Dave Ramsey himself have done a lot of really great things for a lot of people. So many individuals and couples have been able to get out of huge amounts of debt and have really come to a place of feeling confident and good about their finances and feeling more control over them. And that is incredible. That is amazing. And that's something that I hope to do with many of my clients. But there's kind of an element that I find is truly missing, which brings me to this big question that I want to answer in this video. And that is Financial Peace University the money management solution for Christians? Or are there better options out there? So really what I am trying to answer here is Financial Peace University a great solution to learning biblical money management? Having a true understanding of the gospel and how it impacts and transforms your finances. And maybe off the bat, you have an opinion of your own, and I'd love to know what that is. And please feel free to share it in the comments below. And so in this video, I want to share with you things that I do 100% agree with that Dave Ramsey and Financial Peace University teach, but I also want to share with you what I don't agree with and how things could be different for Financial Peace University, or maybe not necessarily for them, not something that they necessarily need to change, but what Christians should be seeking for in their need for an understanding of money management as pertains to the gospel. So there's a few different things I kind of want to address in this video. And so I'm taking this kind of one step at a time. So that way you understand what might be a better solution for you. Hey there, I'm Katie Jones, and I am a certified Christian financial counselor, which is basically a fancy way of saying that I am a faith-based money coach, which is what I like to consider myself. My passion is to help you understand how the gospel transforms every part of our life, and especially our finances. So I love equipping individuals with excellent money management skills that are rooted in the gospel. So that brings me to today's topic, which is Financial Peace University the money management solution for those Christians who need help with their finances? And you might be wondering, well, if you're a Christian money coach yourself, what experience do you have with Financial Peace University? Well, I actually did take the program back in 2020. They were offering some kind of special deal where you could get like 30 days of Financial Peace University for free. And so I decided to do it. And I went through the entire course in like that 30-day free trial period. But it gave me everything that you would get through the program. So my information is based off of the program as it was in 2020. I do have, their third edition workbook that came with the program when I signed up for it. But I did go through all of their content to really understand what it is that they're teaching. That way I knew, first off, kind of like how I should be teaching others and how I could be different from Financial Peace University. So that's why I kind of went through it. But at the same time, I actually did learn a good amount of information myself that I did find pretty helpful. But I just want to let you know that that's what I'm basing a lot of this off of. I have done some, research on their website to understand where they're at and just some of their own beliefs that I didn't understand or didn't get from the program. So there have been things, or there will be things that are slightly different from the 2020 version if you are going to be taking it today or just recently took it. One of their big things is that Chris Hogan is not he's not a Ramsey personality anymore. Interestingly enough, it was due to something like marital infidelity and not living up to biblical standards for it. Just kind of weird, random stuff that I was really curious about as I was doing this research. But with that, I want to dive into the things that I have taken away from going through the program, as well as going through their content on their website, and just having a decent understanding of what they teach. And so I want to share with you some of the things, first off, that I do actually agree with. So in general, I actually agree with most of the financial tips and advice that they share throughout Financial Peace University. I agree with things like having an emergency fund, setting up a budget, saving money, investing it for the future, paying off debt and becoming debt-free. All of these lessons are here within Financial Peace University and generally are lessons that I also teach my clients. These lessons do come from the Bible in general, so they are kind of principles that we can take away from reading through the Bible. And in general, they are practical kind of wisdom tips that most money professionals out there would teach you. And even getting a little bit more specific when it comes to things like when he teaches about emergency funds, I agree with where to put them, which is in some kind of money market account. So having it in a place where it's going to grow long term, but also be accessible when you need it. Those are really important key elements. Obviously, some other people disagree on that and think that you should go invest your emergency fund. And other people think that you should keep it in cash, like in your house. So there's a few different opinions out there, but Dave Ramsey and I teach the same thing when it comes to emergency funds. I also agree with many of the lessons in Financial Peace University in regards to insurance. So things like life insurance, I agree not to have whole life, but rather by term life insurance. And I also agree with not having dental and vision insurance because it's a little bit too expensive than just paying things like that out of pocket, especially if you take really good care of your teeth and really good care of your eyes. But if you are a little bit more at risk for certain things when it comes to dental and vision, then maybe, those insurances are okay with you. But if you're healthy, I really just don't think that you need it. And that's something that Dave Ramsey also teaches. And I also agree that when it comes to your insurances, once you have a fully funded emergency fund, you can go and reevaluate and look at all of your insurance policies and change those to having a higher deductible. Because then once you have an emergency fund to pay for those deductibles when they happen, you can save more money by having a higher deductible plan. So therefore lower monthly premiums. Makes a lot of sense when you look at it kind of on paper. And so this is actually something that I did a few years ago once we had a fully funded emergency fund, and we changed our auto insurance to have a higher deductible. And then a couple years after that, I got in a really bad car accident. I created a video on it. So if you want to check it out, you can go look at that. But my car was totaled, so I had to get a whole new car. And so I paid the deductible. I didn't have any reservations about doing that because we had the fully funded emergency fund to do that. And so I had saved some money over the years by not paying such high deductibles or high monthly premiums. So anyway, all that to say, I agree with what Financial Peace University teaches on that as well. I also agree with and really appreciate how Financial Peace University does a good job kind of teaching this overall lifestyle change. Living differently is kind of how you're going to be able to reprioritize your finances towards other things. Also, as I was going back through the book here, this workbook, I stumbled back upon one of their lessons that I remember really kind of enjoying because it was just really different to add into a program like this. And it was all about how to be aware of and avoid marketing schemes from companies. And so they had this whole lesson here on just ways that businesses try to steal your money from you and how you can be conscious of that. So that way you don't see an advertisement on social media or online or on TV or something like that, and then feel like you absolutely need that product. And just, it was a very interesting lesson. And I really like that they put that in there. And so I really love that and agree with it. And again, just part of that whole process of like changing your mindset and thinking differently and not just allowing society to kind of push you along and tell you how to spend your money, because really what they're out to do is get your money because they're trying to sell something. And lastly, in general, I do agree with the fact that Financial Peace University talks about how it's going to take change and commitment and dedication in order to change your financial patterns. And I mean, it does, because we have been taught these patterns and habits ever since we were basically born. We started like learning all of these different ways of how we view money and how we spend it and how we use it and all this stuff. We just started learning it, whether it was like explicitly taught to us or not. And so to rewrite that and kind of undo a lot of those ingrained patterns in our habits, it's going to take a lot of time. And that's why, like, I do really like that Financial Peace University isn't like they're not trying to market themselves as a quick fix to your finances. And that's so true, because there's a lot of financial gurus and even coaches out there and professionals who are like, hey, I can set you up with a budget that's going to change your life in just 1 week. And that's honestly not true. It takes a lot of time. And it's part of the reason that I also agree with like Financial Peace University is like stick with your steps, and it's going to take a while to get there. More on that in a little bit. And so they do a good job throughout the program kind of reminding you like, hey, this is hard stuff that you're doing. So I love that. I do enjoy that. Those are in general kind of the things that I like about Financial Peace University and that I agree with. And so I want to share with you with some delicacy, some of the things that I don't necessarily agree with. The first thing is the timing of emergency funds. So if you aren't familiar with the baby steps, baby step number 1 is to set up a $1,000 emergency fund. Baby step number 2 is then going and paying off all of your debt. And then baby step number 3 is to continue building that emergency fund of 3 to 6 months. Now, there's a few things about this just these first 3 steps that I don't necessarily agree with. First off, depending on how much debt you have, so baby step number 2, paying off all your debt, it could take you years to pay it all off, because it's basically baby step number 2 is paying off all the debt except for your house. So that includes like all of your student loans and your car loan and medical debt and credit cards. And so if you are someone who has lots and lots and lots of debt, that is going to take a lot of time. No matter what people say, unless you literally eat rice and beans again and nothing else and live in a hole and have no other expenses. But who does that? No one. So it could take you potentially a really long time. And so to go that long without a fully funded emergency fund is really risky. And not only that, but this $1,000 emergency fund that they recommend setting up was based off of, like, that was set like many years ago. So with inflation, if you think about that $1,000 emergency fund, that's really not going to cover much. I mean, I think about like again, like a deductible, even if you have like a lower deductible for your car insurance or health insurance or something like that. And if you get in a car accident or have a major medical event, will $1,000 actually pay your deductible? Maybe. In some cases, yeah, if you have a really great plan. But in a lot of cases, it won't. And then on top of that, like let's say you get really sick and then you can't work, $1,000 isn't going to cut it. And so to wait that long before you fully fund your emergency fund is just too risky. It's too crazy. And it might actually put you into more debt. My kind of philosophy on it and kind of how I help clients through it is to start off with $1,500 to $2,000, like just to start. And then like, okay, let's continue to work up and build up towards like a larger emergency fund, but let's hit that first goal. Like, let's not say like, oh, you have to save $10,000. Like, let's just save that $1,500 and then move up from there and figure out how much you really should be saving depending on your riskiness in life, because that will kind of determine how many months worth you are going to need for an emergency fund. And if you don't know like how much specifically you need for an emergency fund, whether you're on like the 3-month side or the 6-month side, check out the free budgeting course that I have in the links below. I have a small lesson in that course. It's like an hour and a half or so, and there's a lesson in there to determine how much of an emergency fund you should have. Okay, the next thing that I really don't agree with is that the Financial Peace University basically says this is the path. This is the one size fits all for money management. And if you don't do it this way, you're doing it wrong. And there's so much wrong with that. And they have like pro tips every now and then throughout the program. And they had a pro tip that says, don't get ahead of yourself and work the steps out of order or do the plan-ish. No matter how tempting it is, don't try to pay off debt while still funding your 401k or buy a home while you still have student loans breathing down your neck. That split focus isn't going to get the job done. For this to really work, you have to follow the steps in order. Trust us, it's called a proven plan for a reason. Now, again, yes, Financial Peace University has helped thousands of individuals. I know that this plan works for a lot of people, but it doesn't work for everyone. And the reason I know that is because most of the clients that I've worked with in the last 2 years have all taken Financial Peace University and still feel utterly lost and like they don't know what they're doing. And they just need more help. Okay, last money thing is everybody always asks me about my opinion on Dave's philosophy and Financial Peace University's philosophy on credit cards. And I want to say like I kind of agree with it, but like not totally, because I use credit cards and I actually think that credit cards can be extremely beneficial if only if you use them like wisely. So what I mean by that is if you are ever or consistently carrying a balance on your credit cards and therefore paying interest on that debt, on the money that you're borrowing, cut up your credit cards, because that's just so pointless. Like, don't do that. Instead, save up money. So that's what Dave Ramsey is saying. It's like, cut up your credit cards so you don't have to do that. But I say credit cards are fine if you don't carry a balance. In fact, they can be great because like for us, we use a Southwest credit card and an Amazon credit card, and therefore we get cash back. Like we get points for Southwest, and therefore when we buy flights for like Christmas or something at the end of the year, we have points that cover those entire flights, and then we don't have to pay for them. So that's incredible. That's amazing. And same thing with Amazon. We buy a lot of things on Amazon that we have an Amazon credit card that gives us 5% cash back. And so then we actually end up making a lot of purchases on Amazon for free because then we use the cash back that we used for purchases. So anyway, they can be really beneficial, but only if you use them a certain way. I do have a whole video on like what the Bible says about credit cards. So be sure to check that out if you are curious on more about like biblically, what does the Bible say about credit cards? Why I do not believe that Financial Peace University is the money management solution for Christians. Reason number one is that Financial Peace University is subtly promoting the prosperity gospel. Yes, it is true. Let me unpack that, because that might be very overwhelming for you to hear, especially if you've taken Financial Peace University, or maybe if you teach Financial Peace University in your church. I am not saying that you believe in the prosperity gospel, but what I am saying is you might, because I will be the first to admit that until recently, until I really understood what the prosperity gospel was, I was hopelessly under its charm myself. But here, I want to share with you this quote from a book that really hit me in the face. And I was like, oh my gosh, what have I been doing? So I like what pastor and author Dean Sarah, maybe is how you pronounce his last name, describes in his book. His book is called Getting Over Yourself, Trading Belief in Yourself Religion for Christ-Centered Christianity. And here's what he says. In new prosperity churches, Christian terminology is often repackaged in a way that redirects congregants toward their own stories and away from self-denial, picking up a cross, and living to magnify Jesus above all. So he goes on later, a little bit after that, and says that this is like a Disneyfication of the Bible that says, like, when you believe in Jesus, he makes all of your dreams come true. And yes, Jesus did come save us from our sins, but he isn't like this genie from Aladdin that's like, oh yeah, like if you do this, I'm going to give you that, and you're going to live this beautiful, comfortable life in this beautiful home with a picket fence and big porch and beautiful children, and you're all going to sing Kumbaya. Like, no, like that's not the gospel. And in essence, Jesus didn't come to redeem you from your sins in order for you to like hashtag, live your best life. Financial Peace University, yes, is subtly teaching believers that like the gospel exists solely to help us accomplish our financial goals of like becoming debt free and accomplishing retirement, having enough money to retire one day and to send our kids to college debt free. And like, this is what Jesus wants for us. And so we've got to do what the Bible says in order to like live our best lives and to accomplish these things. And like, God will give us everything we need in order to accomplish this. And I'm not saying that Jesus cannot do that. Absolutely. He can do literally anything. I mean, read the Bible. He did some crazy stuff. What Financial Peace doesn't do is help us understand how our finances really should help accomplish God's goal here on earth. So, that's what we really should be doing is like, oh, when it comes to our finances, how can we align it with God's vision for the world? And I'm not saying like, go and give all your money away, but maybe he is asking you to do that. And that's not something that they necessarily teach in Financial Peace University. Is not like, let's figure out what God actually wants with our money. It's like, no, set your goals and God's going to make you, or God's going to help you actually accomplish them. God is not the genie from Aladdin. It's not like, Jesus, please help me pay off my debt. And then like in the next few months, he's like, yeah, here you go. Here's all this money. Again, totally. Jesus could do that and pray for that and believe for it. But don't hold that so tightly. Instead, pray for things like contentment with your debt right now and like just figuring out what to do with your money in this moment. That's something that I have been learning over the last few years going through infertility. That has been a whole journey and a whole ride. But God had to bring me to a point of like, this is not everything. Like, you are everything. And so pray that you wouldn't be so consumed with your debt and your financial stress, and that you can find contentment in those moments, but also ask for relief, ask for ways in, supernatural, spiritual ways that you can figure out to pay off your debt, because he can provide that. But more than that, just pray that you would get more of Jesus, He has a Bible verse here on page 61. It is Proverbs 21:5. I'll put it here on the screen for you. It says, good planning and hard work lead to prosperity, but hasty shortcuts lead to poverty. So there you go. There's like literally, he's like using this Bible verse here for investing and for retirement, and talking about like your good planning is just going to lead you to this place of prosperity. I agree that you should plan and that you should think a few steps ahead. Like, that's wise. There's lots of Proverbs. There's lots of examples of that in just the New Testament even. But if you believe that, again, if you just follow these steps, it's going to lead you to a place of prosperity, like worldly prosperity and lots of wealth and being able to retire and go boating and go on lots of crazy vacations. I would recommend that you read a lot of the accounts of like the Apostle Paul, who was so after God's heart, but yet did not live a life of like what we consider as prosperity. Like, he was imprisoned for so long and eventually killed. But yet that is what God considers, and even Paul himself like recognized as like living a prosperous life because he was living it for Jesus. The next reason I don't believe that FPU is the solution for Christians is this like concept that he has, that Dave teaches on like gazelle intensity, like being really intense. And like, again, I agree that it does take a higher level of dedication and commitment to changing our patterns and stuff. But the way that Dave specifically is teaching it through Financial Peace University as this like gazelle intensity, I don't necessarily agree with. So he gets this idea, this concept from Proverbs 6:1-7. Give no sleep to your eyes, nor slumber to your eyelids. Deliver yourself like a gazelle from the hand of the hunter, and like a bird from the hand of the fowler. So this is his like staple Bible verse that he uses to say like you need to be extremely intense about achieving these financial goals. And so it's this idea, this concept that Dave came up with to describe the speed and intensity that you need to take when paying off your debt specifically. Is like when he brings this lesson out of just like, you need to be so intense and fight it like as if debt were going to consume you and kill you and swallow you alive. The part that I don't like agree with is the priority that he gives paying off debt over everything else. Like he's like, this is your mission and nothing else matters. And you have to be so focused on this goal and pay it off. What the thing that we really need to pay like that hard of an intensity towards is running away from sin. Like, boom. Debt in the Bible typically equals sin, because sin, when we sin against someone, we have a debt towards them that we need to repay. And so when they talk about paying off debt and not having debt towards others, it's like, don't sin against people. Don't have a debt towards them. Don't hurt them. And yes, we can take this information and look at it practically and be like, okay, debt, money. Yeah, we don't want to have a bunch of it. Like taking on a lot of money debt is not a good thing, but also taking on a lot of like sin debt, like heart debt that you have, that's worse. You don't want that kind of debt. And that's the kind of debt that you need to have gazelle intensity on running away from. So to kind of follow up that point, I want to bring you to this next one, which is that Financial Peace University doesn't centralize the gospel, and they kind of promote that. They kind of are like okay with the fact that the gospel isn't central to their program. And yeah, so again, in my studies, I was watching, I was just like typing in like, is financial peace a Christian money management thing? Just different questions along that line. And I stumbled upon one of Dave's like responses in his radio show. And I pulled this quote from it, and he said, Financial Peace University is not like Jesus, 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 every other thing, but it is what the Christian Bible says about money. I quote a lot from Proverbs, but it's not a Bible study. Definitely attest that there are Bible verses and good things in here that are from the Christian Bible, which is cool. But it's kind of just like sprinkling the Bible like throughout the program and just kind of looking for ways in which the Bible can help promote what they're teaching versus like being like, this is the gospel and what it says, and here's how we should manage our money because of this. When FPU does that, when they take like these Bible verses, when they're kind of copying and pasting them into their program, like the most helpful ones, like, oh, like let's find a verse that promotes budgeting. And they're like, boom, the verse from Luke. By doing that, you're kind of stripping the Bible of the gospel. You're just kind of stripping it down to like a manual of principles. Last thing, because it's the last thing here in Financial Peace University, is that giving comes last inside of his program. So the very last lesson is baby step number 7, or lesson number 9 in the entire book, is on giving. This is a big problem because when it comes to being a follower of Christ, giving is like the number one thing that categorizes Christians. Because if we're trying to become more like Jesus, the first thing we can do is be generous, because that's what he did for us. He gave his life, and God gave us Jesus. And so if we're trying to be more like Jesus and be more kingdom focused, we can give, and we can give first. Dave's philosophy on giving is that, like, when you live like no one else, doing all these baby steps, like if you live like no one else, then later you can give like no one else. And I kind of like the concept in a way of like, oh yeah, you can be outrageously generous once you pay off all your debt and you have all these things and then you build wealth and all this stuff. And yes, but the issue is that that's not Jesus's definition of outrageous generosity. Like, that's Dave's version of outrageous generosity, is like, oh, we can give huge amounts of money. But you might know where I'm going with this. Jesus gave the example of the old widow who gave like 2 coins, when next to her there were the Pharisees who were giving large amounts of money. But then Jesus turns to his disciples and he's like, listen up, people. She actually is more generous. Why, you may ask? Because she gave literally everything she had. Whereas these rich, wealthy guys probably gave like something that was kind of considered pocket change to them. Even though it was huge amounts of money, they weren't more generous. Because generosity, outrageous generosity, is defined by the sacrifice that we have to make. But then it's like, okay, now after that, you can be outrageously generous because you've done all these other baby steps and you've focused on yourself first. And then you're like, okay, God, now I have abundance and like, let me give you this. So it's like, okay, he kind of like talks about how you should be still being a giver like throughout this whole process, but you wouldn't know that until you're at the very end of the whole book, the whole program. So anyway, what I propose is that they flip this, or at least start to teach about generosity more from the beginning. This video has been a lot longer than I expected it to be. I apologize. But if you stuck with me this long, I do want to express to you maybe who Financial Peace University might be good for, and why I don't think the program should just cease to exist. The program is great for Christians who maybe don't think that the gospel needs to be centralized, and they're okay with the gospel being put to the side and focusing on their finances first. I say this very lightly because maybe you're in that boat. I would challenge you on your belief to put the gospel to the side and rather unpack it, let it open and explode and transform your life. Because when you do that, so many good things will happen. And I say that lightly because, again, I'm not saying like, oh, do this and then you get that. I'm saying like spiritually, you're going to be blessed. And it will be worth it if you look at how the gospel can actually transform your finances and ask God to transform your heart when it comes to your finances. Who I do actually think that this program is good for is everyone who's a non-believer, who isn't a Christian. Why? Because they're actually exposed to the Bible and they're exposed to a different way of thinking. I mean, I really do like Dave Ramsey's lesson on being generous and what it means to have true financial peace, because he talks about like putting other people first and being generous and how if we were so generous, it could change the landscape of the world, which is so true. But it's not just because we are financially free, we have all of our debt paid off, that will actually happen. No, if we actually just start to live our lives very generously, that's what will really transform the world, is Jesus, not necessarily our money all the time. That's who I really think that this program is good for, is a non-believer, is someone who's not a Christian. So if you have friends or family members who aren't really strong believers even themselves, or maybe just aren't Christians in general, send them to this program, because then they get some doses of the Bible, and maybe you can hold conversations and be like, what did you think about Dave's thoughts on generosity and giving and stuff like that? That could be cool. Let me know your thoughts. You've made it this far. That's incredible. I hope this blessed you. I hope this opened your eyes to some new things, and we'll talk soon. I'm just going to end it there. Bye-bye.